Okay, so we're on the Nerve Wizard panel, which is the next panel after the CPR. And if you're going through the panel steps by hitting the next step at the bottom of each wizard panel, it will automatically skip this if you chose the maxilla, since there's no nerve to be mapped to the maxilla. If you chose the mandible, this will be your next stop. So I'm going to show you the two different ways of handling the nerve, whether you mapped it in the CPR or whether you did not and you chose to map the teeth instead. And let's talk about the pros and cons, because obviously you're going to see the pro for mapping it in the CPR when we do this right nerve, but notice the teeth. We've lost the second molar in the focal trowel, and we're not quite as clear on some of the other teeth. Whereas the left side, on this side, the focal trowel is directly over where the teeth are, but we can't see the nerve because the two aren't always the same, right? The way the nerve runs in the jaw is not always the same as the arch of teeth. So when we're adding, it'll come in on this upper left, you'll see add right nerve is already toggled. So it's asking you to add the nerve on the patient's right, which is our left, the side that's not pinked out. And because we've already done the hard work in the CPR settings, it's quite simple to start in the posterior and click along the canal until everything we can see. So we just map the nerve just like that. Now, finally, you come up to the cross-sectional, and using my mouse wheel, I can move forward and back, okay? And I move to where the mental is, because you obviously can't see the mental in this slice. And I'll usually click kind of deep to the mental and one out in space. Now, one thing to be mindful of, and you can see this little bubble here. Notice that my mouse cursor is a normal mouse pointer, and every once in a while it switches to a finger. And when it switches to a finger, I want you to look at the bottom screen. See how that one nodule turns green? This can mess some people up sometimes, because what we're doing is if I click here, I'll actually be moving that nodule that's turning green, okay? So sometimes it can be hard to place a nodule at the depth of the mental foramen. Let's say we want to map the anterior loop, because you're actually unknowingly moving things that you've already placed in this slice. So for this specific patient, I'll show you what I do. I find the mental foramen. I keep moving forward until I see the loop compress. And what I mean by that is, notice the diameter or the lumen of that canal as we come forward. It's pretty thick. We can actually measure it if we wanted to. So let's say the lumen is about 2.5, okay? And now as we're coming forward, I want to see where it's still kind of wide right here, and then quite suddenly it's gone. And where it goes away is where that nerve ends and kind of goes backwards. That's the loop, right? That's the bottom of the loop, and then it goes posteriorly again. And what goes anteriorly of that is the incisive canal. Okay, so what I'll do typically is I'll find the mental foramen, I'll move forward a couple clicks until I see kind of the furthest part of the loop, if there is one, and I'll click a spot there because I want to know how far that nerve goes anteriorly. Now, to avoid the potential that I'm grabbing other nodules, what I'll do is I'll click out in the cheek area in the vestibule and just click and hold. Okay, and I've made my nodule, and I'm going to drag that to the depth I want it to go. And that just I do that every time because that avoids the potential, even if it's a rare event, of accidentally grabbing one of the already placed markers for this. Okay, and then I'll go back to the main exit of the mental foramen here, and I'll click my last point. Okay, so now what I've done once again is I'll reset it and do it in full speed. So over here on the left panel, you've got delete last point if you just want to delete one point at a time. You also, if I move my face here, you can select the nerve and hit the big delete button and delete the whole nerve. So let's go ahead and just do the nerve one more time. I'm going to start in the back, and I'm simply following the canal, and I'll come up to the cross section, go to the base, click and drag for the base of the anterior loop, go back and click out in the mental foramen. Okay, so now I have mapped my right IA and mental foramen. When we click and we want to toggle to the left, now let's look at the difference between that and the other way of doing it. So let's go ahead and click add left nerve. And you see here we don't have a clear view. We have a little bit of the posterior portion and a little bit of the anterior portion. So here what I'll do is I'll start in the back where I can see it. And then using my mouse wheel, I can spin. And what I'm doing is I'm expanding and contracting that focal trowel. And so as I expand it, here I can see the nerve, but notice a little bit of the anterior goes away. and I scroll it back, and I can keep scrolling and clicking. And sometimes this is more accurate and you can get just as fast, because now I can see, let me delete that last point, you can actually see the extent of the loop. See how the lumen changes? It's thick, 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 and then right there it gets really thin. So I don't even need to do that kind of guesswork in the cross-sectional slice when I do it this way. So here I can just click right to the furthest extent of that larger luminal space, and then scroll back on my cross-sectional till I'm in the midline of the mental foramen itself, and click out. So 2 different ways to do the nerve drawing. Personal preference entirely. If you want to do it kind of quicker in this phase but take a little bit more time in the CPR, or if you want to have it lined up in the CPR for the ideal tooth-borne arch, and just use your mouse to be able to scroll through the nerve here. Okay, so those are the 2 ways to do it. We're going to go to teeth setup next and show us how to do some virtual wax ups for a case if we're going to be doing an implant case. Okay, see you in the next video.